Hello, this is Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'd like to welcome you to video 2 of In Deep Conversation. This is a series, a 3-video series, where I'm in conversation with Juan of Bookish Islander about a specific book, in this case, The Years by Annie Ernaux. The way this series works is that Juan has kicked off the conversation on his channel. I'll put a link to it below. And in that, he kind of gives a description and sets up the context, in essence, of the book, and then asks me a few questions. That's what this video is about. So I'll answer the questions. I will give my verdict on my thoughts and feelings about the book. And then I have some questions that I'd like him to answer. And so a few days after this video is published, he will update a video with his responses to my thoughts as well as to the questions that I've asked. So we will put a link to his channel. So please make sure to go and subscribe to his channel if you're not already subscribed, and watch out for that video. And of course, if you're looking at this after it's been a few days after it's been published, all videos may already be released. So we have a playlist. Each of us both have a playlist to this video, as well as our discussion of the Topeka School. So I hope that makes sense. So start with that one if you are brand new and you're just seeing this for the first time. Now, one thing I do need to say is spoilers abound. The reason we're calling it In Deep Conversation is that we are actually having deep, thoughtful, hopefully thoughtful, conversations about the material, including how the book ends and our thoughts. So this is really hopefully to be a place where people who have read this book would like to engage with us, whether immediately after we publish or down the road if you choose to read it later on and you are searching for some videos about the years. So with that said, let me first say why I was interested in doing this buddy read with Juan and what was interesting about the years for me. I'm a big fan of the Fitzcarraldo publishing house. I think they publish really intellectually interesting work. Some of it is a little highbrow. Some of it can be considered pretentious. But I've heard so many great things about the years that I thought it might be really interesting to try my hand and see what it's like. Now, I did try this book one time before, and I DNF'd it. We were on a trip. We were in Europe, and it was just incredibly, incredibly hot, and I couldn't focus, and I didn't really get what was happening at the setup of the book. And for me, the setup is everything. If I'm not in a headspace to dive right in, it's very difficult for me to maintain and move forward. So I was interested in giving it another shot because people that I respect really, really love this book. The other reason is because we were doing a buddy read of 2 memoir-ish books. So we were reading The Topeka School by Ben Lerner, and we were also reading this. And I wondered if there was any interesting dynamics at play between the two, between one being a woman writing from France and a man writing from the United States, and just to see if there was anything of interest. But we found very, very quickly, these are such completely different books that it didn't make sense to try to think of them as a pairing. I also was interested in the female perspective, and I'm very drawn to feminism. I'm very drawn to women writers and women's stories. So I was very interested for that aspect as well. And then, the French acclaim. So I will admit I have not read as much French literature as I would like. So this was a really lovely foray to read something in translation. So all that said, that's kind of why this book. Now let me answer the questions that Juan had sent over to me. He said, what do you think about the structure, describing the photographs and then moving on to videotapes and etc.? Do you think that worked for you, or did you find it disorienting? I will absolutely admit that I had no concept of what was happening when I first started reading the book. And what was really, really lovely was Juan had a very similar disorienting experience when he started the Topeka school that I had with the years. And so we both helped each other out of the confusion with the book. So that was lovely. And once I understood what I was concerned, because I know Fitzcarraldo can be a little experimental, I was concerned it was just going to be these strange little vignettes. And it took me a while to realize, wait a minute, they're photographs. These are different photographs, and we're going to hear a story connecting them. I was yet to realize that there was going to be a story. So after I made it through that first introductory period, then I started to get into the narration. It all started to feel. I found my footing, so to speak, in the story itself. So while it was disorienting at first, it ended up being something that I think anchored the story, and I think added a lovely layer. The next question. This book is dense in references to French contemporary history, politics, and culture. As an American reader, did this get in the way of your enjoyment of the book, or did it add to it? I have to say it completely added to it. It added points in time that allowed me to understand what was happening at these different layers, what was happening socially, what was happening in the culture, what was happening at the same time in government. It added a layer and a richness, or multiple layers and richness that I needed, and I was very happy for. So I thought that was just magnificent. It felt like I was just dropped in, and I could observe, and almost like an anthropological study as I was reading what is a familiar story for me, which is a story of a woman and a woman's growth and her history as she goes through life. The next question. High levels of consumerism came to France and Europe several decades after they did to the United States. What is your reaction of the not so gradual appearance of consumerism in the French life depicted in the book? I have to say, I was reading it thinking, no, don't let those strip malls into your town. Fight French people. Don't let this happen. And so it was with impending doom that you see it start to take shape. Because at the very beginning of the book, life just seems, it's life post World War II. And it just seems so stripped back and bare, but stripped back to essentials. And there is a sense of community and a simpler life. And while it was not easy, convenience wasn't used as a ploy to give more things, to get more things. It seemed like there was a richer life and a richer quality to the life, to people's lives. So that was really hard. That was really hard to kind of watch that decay and erode as the time progressed. The next question is, what do you think about the way the protagonist deals with Catholic prudishness? I thought this was very interesting because I will admit that was a part of the book that just kind of, the Catholicism just kind of glazed by me, because I don't know a lot about Catholic culture. I'm not religious. I am spiritual. I'm a Buddhist. I live in Berkeley. It's the most un-Catholic place probably in the United States. So it's just not part of my experience. Now, of course, I deeply resonate with the rebelliousness of youth and the rebelliousness against a patriarchal society. But that specific type of patriarchy that is religious influenced is not something I'm very familiar with. The next question is, the year spans from 1940 to 2006, and it moves through from the personal to the communal, yet it's not a big book. Can you talk about how you feel about that? I will say, I think this is probably the best rendering I've ever experienced that takes you through the experience of the individual, the experience of the family, the changes that happen in a community, the changes that happen to a town, and the changes that happen to a country. The span is really wide, but the layers are very, very deep. And I think that she did this masterfully. I get it. I get the acclaim for this book. I get the deep, abiding love, because she's done something absolutely masterful. I mean, look at all the tabs, because there were so many poignant moments and so many points in the book where her phrasing evoked such an emotion in me, or sparked an idea, or sparked a memory of my own life and my own experience, or gave me something new to think about. So it was masterful. It was absolutely masterful. So then his last question is, overall, what's your verdict? So I think you probably get the sense that I fell in love with this book. What I loved about this book is that we watch these pictures kind of allow us to oversee from a bird's eye view into this one woman's life. But she's not even named until she really starts to have agency. She doesn't start to claim that I until she starts to become someone who has desires and who is able to act on those desires and move forward in the world herself. And we see how her desires are at times in conflict with what's going on in society or in the culture, or even the people that she loves around her. So at one point, she talks very strongly about never wanting to be a mother, never wanting to get married, wanting to have a writer's life. And then at another point, she talks about how she sits back and she sees that, oh, I have what I've always wanted: a husband, children, an apartment, things. And then you see her through the span of her life, the challenges of being a mother but wanting to be independent, the desire that she's always had to be a writer that had to be put on the back burner, and she had to become a teacher, and how that pulled at her. And I found the most profound and poignant times were later in her life, when she has that empty nest and she's finally able to determine what she's going to do with her life, even though she's older. And she decides to sit down and write this. And I mean, what a force. What an output of a life well lived. Maybe it wasn't to her vision of what she wanted at the beginning, but we wouldn't have gotten this masterwork had she not gone through all of those and had the foresight and the intelligence to be able to think through how the events in her life interplayed with what was happening in the society, what was happening in the nation and the politics and the culture. I cannot recommend this more highly. If you are interested in what women in other parts of the world, if you're an American and wants to know what women in the other parts of the world go through and what their lives are like, if you are interested in memoir as a medium or a genre, I guess I should say, if you have heard of this book and have been interested in, I think it is well worth your time. And I gave it a 5-star, which I rarely do because I actually want to reread it again. It was that profound. And I know that I missed things, and I think it's only going to grow, and my appreciation will grow in the years that I read this moving forward. So that's my verdict. Okay, here are the questions I have for you, Juan, and I have a few. So the first one is that Annie goes into such incredible detail and speaks with specificity about physicality and her body and sex and her experience of all of that. How was that for you to read as a man? The second question I have is, how did Annie Ernaux come on your radar? Yes, she's very famous, but have you read anything that she's done before? Is the years the thing that pulled you, or was it more in general her as a writer? How did you feel about that changing lens, the universal to the specific, or kind of going through those different vantages? Did that work for you? Were there any specific passages that you felt spoke to you? And if so, could you share them? The feminism in this book is so crystal clear and sharp. Do you tend to read books on feminism? And then the last question I have, of course, is what's your verdict? What did you think? So if you are as interested in Juan's verdict and his answers to those questions, please make sure to follow Juan and make sure that you're subscribed to Bookish Islander's channel. And please, I would love to start a conversation here. Don't feel that you have to wait and to watch his. If you have any comments, questions, or anything that you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free to do so. One of the entire reasons we wanted to do this series is to create broader, maybe even deeper dialogues about specific books, so that we could kind of go deep on the books that really do invite a more intimate and thoughtful conversation. So if you have anything to say, please add it in the comments below, and look for Juan's video. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll look forward to doing more of these in the future. Bye.